So, I want you to imagine a scenario. You're out digging through an ancient trash heap in Egypt, which, by the way, is exactly how this story starts. And you stumble across a jar.
Right. A sealed clay jar.
Yeah. And inside that jar is a book. You dust it off, expecting to find, the usual stuff. Stories about shepherds, maybe some miracles, a sermon on a mount. But instead, you open it up and there's no story.
Not at all.
There is no narrative, there's no crucifixion scene, there's no resurrection.
It's just a list, a really raw, unpolished list of sentences.
Exactly. It's like finding a notebook of bullet points that someone scribbled down in a massive hurry, but the person who supposedly said them is Jesus, and the things he's saying, they do not sound like the Sunday school Jesus.
They really don't.
They sound strange, cryptic, almost like these weird riddles designed specifically to mess with your head.
That is honestly the perfect way to describe the Gospel of Thomas. It is not a story you sit back and read. It is a code you have to crack. And for a lot of people, this is a pretty terrifying text because it takes the comfortable, familiar furniture of religion and just rearranges it completely.
We are doing a deep dive into the Lambden translation of the Gospel of Thomas today. And I have to admit, reading through the sources you sent over for this, I felt a little disoriented.
Yeah, that's a common reaction.
Because it's familiar, right? The phrasing feels familiar, but everything is just slightly off-kilter.
Well, that feeling of disorientation is actually the point of the text. This document, which was discovered at Nag Hammadi back in 1945, is what scholars call a sayings gospel. It contains 114 logia or sayings, and right from the title page, it throws a massive curveball. It claims to be written by Didymos Judas Thomas.
Okay, so I actually looked this up because the name really stood out to me. Didymos is just the Greek word for twin, right?
Yep, that's right.
And Thomas is the Aramaic word for twin. So his name is basically twin, Judas twin.
It is. And the implication there, which the text really doesn't shy away from, is that this was recorded by the twin brother of Jesus. Now, obviously, historically or biologically, that opens a massive can of worms that we do not have the time to fully unpack today.
Right, we'd be here all day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But metaphorically, it brilliantly sets the stage. If you are a twin, you are a mirror image. And this entire text is essentially about looking into a mirror.
And the stakes for looking into that mirror are set incredibly high in the very first line. It says, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. I mean, that is a really bold claim for a list of bullet points.
It's a massive claim. Think about the standard Christian message that most people know. You are saved because of what Jesus did, his death and his resurrection. But here, that's entirely gone.
It's all on you.
Right. You are saved by what you understand. It shifts the entire burden of salvation from belief to interpretation. It beframes spirituality as an intellectual and spiritual puzzle, and the grand prize is immortality.
So if this is a puzzle, what exactly is the picture on the box? What are we trying to see? Because as I went through these 114 sayings, one specific phrase just kept popping up over and over. The kingdom.
Oh, yes. The kingdom.
But reading it, it doesn't seem to mean what I think it means.
No, it absolutely does not. If you grew up in the West, the kingdom usually means one of two things, right? It's either the place you go when you die, like heaven with the clouds and the pearly gates, or it's a future event where God comes down, judges the wicked, and fixes the world.
Right. It's either up there or it's later.
Exactly. But the Gospel of Thomas vehemently rejects both of those ideas, and it actually does it with a bit of sarcasm, which is fascinating. Look at saying 3. Jesus says, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you.
I actually laughed out loud at that one. He's basically saying, if God is in the clouds, the seagulls are beating you to him.
That is exactly what he's saying. And then he continues, if they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. He's openly mocking the idea of the divine being a literal map location. He's telling you that if you are looking for a physical place, you are already completely lost.
So if it's not in the sky and it's not in the sea, where is it?
Well, he gives the answer immediately after that. He says, rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it's outside of you.
Inside and outside. I have to say, that sounds a bit vague. It almost sounds like a cliche Instagram caption or something. What does that actually mean in a practical sense?
I get that. But it means the kingdom isn't a place at all. It's a layer of reality. It is a frequency you tune into. Think of it like this. Radio waves are filling the room you are sitting in right now.
Right.
They're inside the room and they're outside the room. You can't see them, but they are absolutely real. If you have the right receiver, the right knowledge, you can hear the music. But if you don't have the receiver, you just hear silence.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So the kingdom is a state of being that is actually always present.
Yes. In fact, there is a great moment in saying 113. The disciples, who, by the way, are constantly missing the point throughout this text, they ask him, when will the kingdom come? They're literally looking for a date on the calendar.
And Jesus shuts them down hard.
He really does. He says it will not come by waiting for it. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it.
Spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it. That's honestly haunting. It implies that we are walking through paradise right now, staring at our phones, worrying about our taxes, just completely blind to the divine reality right in front of our faces.
That's the exact tragedy the text is pointing out. It suggests that the problem isn't that God is hiding somewhere far away. The problem is that we are asleep. We are, to use the text's own language, drunk. We desperately need to wake up and see what is already here.
Okay, so if the kingdom is here, but it's invisible to me because I'm drunk or blind or asleep, how do I sober up? Like, what is the actual mechanism for seeing it?
The mechanism is the single most important concept in the entire book: self-knowledge. This is precisely why scholars often link the Gospel of Thomas to Gnosticism, which comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge. But we aren't talking about book smarts here.
Right, not like memorizing facts.
Exactly. It's deep, intuitive insight into who you really are at your core.
That brings us back to saying 3, the one with the birds and the fish. The second half of that saying goes, when you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father.
It's a complete identity shift. You realize that you aren't just a biological machine wandering around in the world. You are fundamentally connected to the source of the world. But there's a severe warning attached to it.
Yeah, this next part felt a bit aggressive. It says, but if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty.
That line hits so hard. It is you who are that poverty.
It's such weird phrasing. Usually we say like someone has poverty or lives in poverty, but to actually be poverty.
It's defining your state of existence.
Yeah.
If you don't know your true self, your divine spark, if you will, you are fundamentally empty. You can have $1 billion, you can be world famous, you can be the smartest person in the room, but you're ontologically poor.
Ontologically poor. That's a really good way to put it.
And you see this echoed in Sing 6c7. Jesus says, if one who knows the all still feels a personal deficiency, he is completely deficient.
Knowing the all. So that means like knowing physics, knowing history, knowing how the galaxies spin.
You could know the ultimate theory of everything, but if you don't know the observer, if you don't know the self, you essentially know nothing. It's like being the world's foremost expert on the mechanical workings of a camera, but never once realizing that you are the one looking through the lens.
Wow. This heavy focus on the self feels very modern. It almost feels like a therapy session. But then the text takes this really sharp turn into something that feels honestly anti-religious.
Oh, it is incredibly subversive.
Yeah. I'm talking specifically about the rituals. In saying 6, the disciples ask for what looks like a religious to-do list. They ask, do you want us to fast? How shall we pray? Shall we give alms? And these are the pillars of religion. They just want the rules.
And in saying 14, Jesus basically tells them to stop doing all of it. He says, if you fast, you will give rise to sin for yourselves, and if you pray, you will be condemned, and if you give alms, you will do harm to your spirits.
Hold on. Prayer leads to condemnation. Charity harms your spirit. That sounds completely backwards to everything we're taught. Why would good works be bad for you?
This is where you have to look closely at intention. The Gospel of Thomas is utterly ruthless about authenticity. It argues that external rituals are very often just masks we wear to hide our internal poverty. If you are fasting to prove to everyone that you are holy, you are feeding your ego, not your spirit.
So it's performative, like posting a selfie of you donating to a charity.
Precisely. If the kingdom is truly inside you, then performing a religious ritual outside of you is just a distraction. It's obsessing over the map instead of actually walking the territory. He even goes after dietary restrictions, which were, of course, huge in the ancient world. He says, eat what they set before you.
Because what gluten isn't the problem.
Because, as he says right there, for what goes into your mouth will not defile you, but that which issues from your mouth, it is that which will defile you. The poison isn't the food on your plate, it's the lies, the hate, the ignorance that you speak out into the world.
It's radical internalism. Everything is inward. But I have to ask you about saying 53. The disciples ask him about circumcision. Now, for a first-century Jewish context, this is the deal. This is the literal mark of the covenant with God. And Jesus responds with, well, he makes a biology joke.
He appeals to nature, yes. He says if it were beneficial, their father would beget them already circumcised from their mother.
I mean, that's funny, but isn't it also incredibly dismissive? He's dismantling 1,000 years of sacred tradition by basically saying, if God wanted it, you'd just be born that way.
It is entirely dismissive, and it shows just how far this text is from mainstream tradition. He is arguing that physical alterations do absolutely nothing for the spirit. He goes on to say true circumcision in spirit is what actually matters. He is meticulously stripping away every single external prop, the temple, the diet, the physical surgery, until you are left with just you.
And that profound nakedness leads us directly to the most difficult part of the text, at least for me, the concept of making the two one. This phrase comes up a few times, and it seems to be the key to cracking the whole code. But honestly, reading it, it sounds like abstract nonsense.
It sounds abstract to us because our brains are deeply wired for duality. We constantly think in binaries, good and bad, light and dark, male and female, me and you. This text argues that this exact division is the root cause of our suffering. It's an illusion that we have to shatter.
There's this really striking scene in Saying 22. Jesus sees these infants being breastfed. And he says, these infants being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom.
Because babies don't have that split yet. They don't have an ego that says me versus the world. They are just fully immersed in it.
But the disciples don't get it at all. They ask, shall we then as children enter the kingdom? And Jesus replies with this crazy formula. He says, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the out like the inside, and the above like the below.
Think about what that state actually feels like in real life. Have you ever been in what psychologists call a flow state? Maybe playing a sport or playing an instrument or deep in a creative project?
Sure. You totally lose track of time. You forget you're even doing the thing.
Right. In that exact moment, the inside, which is your intention, and the outside, which is your physical action, are perfectly synced. There is zero gap between them. You aren't trying to play the piano. The music is just happening through you. Thomas is suggesting that spiritual enlightenment is essentially a permanent flow state. It's realizing that the separation between God up there and me down here is a complete lie.
But then he drops a specific binary into the mix that makes everyone very uncomfortable today. He says, and when you make the male and the female one and the same.
Yes, that's the one.
And that leads us straight to the very last saying in the book, saying 114. This is the one everyone stumbles over. Peter, who honestly comes across as kind of a jerk in this text, says, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life.
A truly charming sentiment from Peter.
Right. But Jesus' defense of Mary is, it's weird. He says, I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males.
Oof. Yeah, it's rough.
I mean, I will make her male. That sounds like he completely agrees with Peter that being female is the inherent problem.
I know. It sounds absolutely terrible to modern ears. But we really have to read this impartially through the lens of ancient philosophy, not modern sociology. In the symbolic language of that era, if you look at Platonism, Philo of Alexandria, and other Gnostic texts, female was used as a code word for the earthly, the material, the perishable. Male was code for the heavenly, the spiritual, the indivisible.
So he's not talking about Mary's actual physical gender at all?
No, not at all. He's talking about spiritual transmutation. He's saying Mary, and frankly the men too, must transcend the earthly, the female, to become spiritual, the male. But remember the earlier saying we just discussed, make the male and female into a single one. The ultimate goal isn't to literally become a man. It's to become a unified being that exists beyond the concept of gender entirely.
So it's about complete reintegration.
Exactly. It's about returning to the undivided. If you were split into a binary, you were weak. If you are one, you were incredibly powerful. Look at saying 106. He says, when you make the two one, when you say mountain, move away, it will move away.
That's such a famous image, moving mountains. But usually we're told that faith moves mountains. Here, it's not faith at all, it's integration.
It's wholeness. The power doesn't come from asking an external God to do you a favor. It comes from aligning yourself so perfectly with reality that your will and the universe's will are the exact same thing.
This sounds incredibly empowering, but also really dangerous. It sounds like you're essentially saying, I am God.
And that, right there, is exactly why this book was buried in a jar in the desert and not included in the canonical Bible. It's total heresy to Orthodox tradition.
There's a moment in Saying 13 that really captures this sense of danger beautifully. Jesus asks the disciples, who am I like? Peter steps up and says, you're a righteous angel. Matthew says, You're a wise philosopher.
They're desperately trying to put him in a familiar category.
But Thomas says, Master, my mouth is wholly incapable of saying whom you are like. He hits the absolute wall of language. He realizes that words just don't work here.
And look closely at Jesus' response to Thomas. This is a crucial turning point. He says, I'm not your master.
I am not your master. That is an absolute mic drop.
It really is. He continues, because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring which I have measured out. In all the other Gospels, Jesus is the shepherd, the teacher, the Lord. Here, he looks at Thomas and says, we are drinking from the exact same water. We are on the exact same level.
And this is easily my favorite part of the whole book. Jesus takes Thomas aside and whispers 3 things to him, 3 secrets.
And of course, the other disciples are dying to know. They ask him, what did he say to you?
And Thomas gives this terrifying reply. He says, if I tell you one of the things which he told me, you will pick up stones and throw them at me. A fire will come out of the stones and burn you up.
He is basically telling them, the truth I just heard is so radioactive, so utterly blasphemous to your orthodox ears, that you would murder me on the spot for saying it out loud.
What do you think those 3 words actually were?
Well, historically we don't know for sure, but given the theology woven through the rest of the text, it was highly likely something along the lines of, I am you, or you are the Father. It was the ultimate final collapse of the distance between God and man. And for a religion that is built entirely on worshiping a distinct, separate God, that is an atomic bomb.
It really explains why this particular path is repeatedly described as solitary. You can't really do this kind of radical self-discovery sitting in a crowded church pew, can you?
No, you can't. The text frequently uses the Greek word monachos, meaning solitary or monk. In saying 49, he says, blessed are the solitary and elect, for you will find the kingdom. You have to willingly step away from the crowd. The crowd lives in the duality us versus them, rules versus sin. The solitary person has to look inward to find the unity.
It's a really lonely road.
It is. But as Saint 42 advises so perfectly, become passersby.
Become passersby. I love that phrase so much. It sounds like he's saying just don't get too attached to anything.
Exactly. Walk through the world, engage with it, experience it, but realize you are ultimately just a tourist here. Don't build your entire core identity on your job or your politics or your social status. All of those things are just the scenery.
We've covered a lot of deep ground today. From birds in the sky, to the rejection of outward prayer, to the intense philosophy of making the male and female one, it's a completely different flavor of spirituality. It's not about being saved from your sins by someone else. It's about waking yourself up from a nightmare.
That's a beautiful, accurate way to put it. It's purely a gospel of awakening.
But before we sign off, I want to leave everyone listening with one final, incredibly provocative thought. We've talked a lot about the light within and the importance of bringing it out, but saying 70 frames this concept in a way that is honestly kind of terrifying.
It's the ultimate spiritual ultimatum.
Jesus says, that which you have will save you if you bar it forth from yourselves. That which you do not have within you will kill you if you do not have it within you.
What that means is there is absolutely no middle ground. There is a potential inside you. You can call it the kingdom, the light, the divine self. If you express it, if you truly live it, it becomes your salvation. But if you suppress it, if you actively ignore it just to fit in with the crowd or to follow external rules or just to stay comfortable, that act of suppression will eventually destroy you.
It's not framed as a threat from an angry deity. It's just stated as a harsh fact of nature, like saying, if you don't breathe, you will die.
Exactly. The potential is already sitting there inside you. You just have to birth it.
So the question for everyone listening to this right now is, what are you holding back? What is sitting inside you that you are terrified to bring forth into the world? Because according to the ancient wisdom of the Gospel of Thomas, letting it out is the only way you survive.
Incredibly heavy but beautiful thought to end on.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.